Section 1. The anniversary that changed everything. The soft hum of conversation filled the dimly lit five-star restaurant, the gentle clinking of crystal glasses blending seamlessly with the elegant piano melody drifting through the air. Every table was adorned with flickering candlelight, setting the perfect mood for romance and celebration. The air smelled of aged wine and the tantalizing aroma of gourmet cuisine, a place where only the wealthiest dined, where business tycoons closed multi-million-dollar deals over plates of delicately plated steak and seafood. It was here, among New York's elite, that Ethan Reynolds sat across from his wife, Sophia, a woman who had once been the center of his world. To any outside observer, they were the perfect couple. Ethan, a powerful millionaire, carried himself with the effortless arrogance of a man who had never heard the word no. His tailored suit, crisp and refined, fit him like a second skin, exuding power and influence. Across from him, Sophia sat in quiet grace, the epitome of elegance. She was draped in a form-fitting black dress, diamonds adorning her slender neck, her fingers wrapped around the stem of a wine glass as she sipped leisurely, her eyes reflecting a depth of intelligence most failed to recognize. It was their 10th anniversary, a milestone, a testament to endurance, commitment, and for Sophia, patience. Ethan had insisted on dining at one of the most exclusive restaurants in the city, a place where he could flaunt his wealth, where people would look at them and envy what they had. To the world, their marriage was the stuff of fairy tales, a powerful, handsome businessman and his devoted, stunning wife. But beneath the pristine surface of their union, cracks had long since begun to show. Sophia had seen it all: the late-night meetings, the unexplained absences, the lingering scent of an unfamiliar perfume on his shirts. She knew. She had known for a long time, but she had said nothing. Not yet. Instead, she had smiled, played the perfect wife, attended galas at his side, and waited. Oh, how she had waited. To 10 years, he murmured, raising his glass. And to many more. Sophia clinked her glass against his, her lips curving ever so slightly. To many more, she echoed, though the weight behind her words carried a meaning only she knew. They continued their meal in silence, enjoying the luxurious spread before them: tender filet mignon, seared scallops, a bottle of the finest Bordeaux. Ethan's gaze often wandered around the room, nodding at familiar faces, basking in the recognition that came with being one of the city's wealthiest men. He was untouchable, unstoppable, or so he believed. But then the moment that would unravel everything arrived. The soft murmur of the restaurant came to an abrupt halt as the sound of heels clicking against the marble floor approached their table with undeniable purpose. Heads turned, whispers began, and before Ethan could even glance over his shoulder, the woman who had been haunting his double life materialized beside their table, her presence as unwelcome as it was undeniable. Vanessa Harper. Ethan, she purred, her voice dripping with amusement. I was beginning to think you forgot about me. Sophia's wine glass met the table with a quiet clink. Her gaze lifted, slow and deliberate, locking onto the woman before her. But she didn't react the way Vanessa had expected. There was no gasp of shock, no trembling lip, no devastated tears threatening to spill. She simply leaned back in her chair, an expression of mild interest gracing her face, as if watching a mildly entertaining performance. What the hell are you doing here? He hissed, his voice a whisper but sharp as a knife. Vanessa laughed, the sound ringing through the restaurant like a bell. Oh, darling, you didn't think I'd let you wine and dine your wife on our anniversary without making an appearance, did you? She turned her gaze toward Sophia, tilting her head with mock pity. I mean, it is our anniversary too, in a way, seeing as Ethan and I have been together for, oh, how long now? She tapped her chin theatrically. Ah, yes, 2 years. A collective gasp rippled through the nearby tables. The whispers turned to murmurs, and soon enough, all eyes were on the three of them. Ethan's jaw clenched, his entire body wound tight with barely restrained rage. Vanessa, leave. Now. Sophia exhaled softly, her fingers tracing the rim of her wine glass. Finally, after a beat of silence, she spoke. 2 years, she mused. That's quite a commitment. Vanessa blinked, clearly thrown off by Sophia's reaction, or rather, her lack of one. Where was the fury, the devastated outburst, the shattered woman begging for answers? Ethan turned to Sophia, his throat bobbing. Sophia, But before he could even attempt to spin another lie, she reached into her handbag, retrieving a single, crisp envelope. With practiced ease, she slid it across the table toward him. "Open it," she said simply. Ethan hesitated, his instincts screaming that whatever lay inside was nothing good. But with the entire restaurant watching, he had no choice. He picked it up, carefully pulling out the contents. As his eyes scanned the documents, his breath hitched. It was a signed divorce agreement. His name was already on it. The date had been filled in. Every asset had been divided, and half of everything he owned was no longer his. A wave of stunned silence swept through the room. Even Vanessa, who had come in brimming with confidence, was suddenly on edge. "This," Ethan swallowed. "What is this?" Sophia tilted her head, her voice laced with feigned innocence. "Oh, darling, did you think I didn't know?" His fingers trembled as he flipped through the pages, his stomach twisting into a knot as the realization dawned. "The prenup, nullified," Sophia interrupted smoothly. "On the grounds of infidelity. I made sure of it the moment I had proof." Vanessa paled. "Wait, proof?" Sophia reached for her glass, sipping leisurely before continuing. "Bank statements, hotel records, private investigators. Do you really think I've been blind these past 2 years?" Her gaze flicked between them, cold and calculating. "I just had to wait until the moment was right." Ethan looked like he had been punched in the gut. His mistress, the woman he had risked everything for, now shifted uncomfortably beside him, suddenly aware that she had walked into something much bigger than she had anticipated. Sophia stood smoothing the fabric of her dress, as composed as ever. "Enjoy the rest of your evening," she said, turning to leave. Ethan shot to his feet. "Sophia, wait." But she was already walking away, leaving behind 2 people whose smug confidence had just been shattered. And the best part? She wasn't done yet. Section 2, the wife who was always 10 steps ahead. The moment Sophia walked out of the restaurant, a wave of satisfaction surged through her. It was a feeling she had waited for, planned for, years in the making. She wasn't just walking away from her husband. She was walking away from the carefully crafted facade of a marriage that had long ceased to exist. The night air was crisp against her skin as she stepped into the waiting town car, sliding into the plush leather seat with practiced elegance. The driver, a man she had hired herself, offered a silent nod before pulling away from the curb. She didn't need to look back to know the scene she had left behind. Ethan would still be sitting there, hands gripping the divorce papers, his mind scrambling to comprehend just how everything had unraveled in the span of minutes. Vanessa, his mistress, would be fuming, realizing that the security she had sought in Ethan's wealth was no longer a guarantee. That was the beauty of it. Both of them had thought they were in control. They had no idea that Sophia had been the one controlling the board all along. As the car wove through the glittering city streets, she allowed herself a moment to exhale, not out of exhaustion, but out of sheer triumph. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. This was a symphony she had orchestrated down to the finest note. Every document, every legal maneuver, every hidden preparation, it had all been leading to tonight. Ethan had underestimated her. That was his first mistake, but not his last. She reached for her phone, scrolling through her messages until she found the one she had been waiting for. A single text from her lawyer, confirming that the financial transfers had been completed. Half of Ethan Reynolds' empire was now legally hers, every detail finalized before he even had the chance to react. Perfect. The timing had been everything. Had she confronted him too soon, he would have fought her in court, dragged out the process, made her suffer just to save face. But now, he was too publicly humiliated to fight back. He wouldn't dare take this to court, not when every headline tomorrow would already be tearing him apart. Billionaire Ethan Reynolds exposed in anniversary scandal. Wife leaves with half his fortune. Oh, the media would feast on this. She glanced at the screen as another message popped up, this time from Charles Whitmore. "Everything's set, the estate is ready for you." Sophia smiled. Charles had been her silent partner in this escape plan, the one who had ensured that she wouldn't just walk away with money, she'd walk away with power, and that was exactly what she intended to do. By now, Ethan would have snapped out of his stupor. He would have left the restaurant, called his lawyers in a frenzy, demanded answers. And Vanessa? She would be spiraling, realizing that her golden ticket had just been shredded before her eyes. Sophia leaned back, amused at the thought. For the past 2 years, she had been playing the role of the devoted wife while Ethan had been playing the fool. He had assumed she was too blind to see, too weak to fight back. He thought she'd cry, beg, plead for his love, just like the other women he had discarded before her. He had no idea that she had been preparing for war. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a call from Ethan. She let it ring, then rang again and again. She didn't answer. Not yet. Let him panic. Let him drown in his own chaos. Finally, she typed a single response and hit send. Check your email. She imagined the moment he saw it, how his blood would run cold as he opened the files she had attached, the hidden bank accounts she had uncovered, the financial discrepancies that proved he had been funneling company money for personal use, the tax documents that, in the wrong hands, could bring his empire to its knees. Sophia had spent the last 2 years collecting every piece of evidence she needed, not just for the divorce, but for the power shift that would follow. If Ethan so much as thought of trying to retaliate, she would bury him. Her phone buzzed again. Ethan. Sophia, we need to talk. Now. She let a slow smirk curl at the corner of her lips before typing her response. Oh, darling, did you think I didn't know? The satisfaction of those words was almost intoxicating. She had waited for this moment, had dreamed of it in those long, lonely nights, while he had been out playing house with his mistress. Now, the tables had turned and Ethan was about to realize just how little power he had left. The car pulled up to a secluded estate on the outskirts of the city, far from the prying eyes of reporters and society's whispers. This was her sanctuary, the place she had prepared for when the storm inevitably hit. As the driver opened the door, she stepped out, the crisp night air carrying the scent of pine and fresh rain. A new beginning. She had thought once upon a time that marriage to Ethan had been her ticket to happiness, that she could build a life with him. But now she knew better. She had won. And Ethan? Section 3. Ethan Reynolds' empire begins to crumble. Ethan sat in the back of his car, the divorce papers still clenched in his hands, his fingers trembling with rage and disbelief. The restaurant was a blur in his mind now, the murmurs of high society elites fading into a background hum that no longer mattered. He had gone there expecting a night of indulgence, a moment of triumph where his mistress would replace his wife in the shadows, where he would watch Sophia's heart shatter in real time, where he would be the one in control. Instead, Sophia had left him stunned, blindsided in a way he had never thought possible. And now she was gone. Not just gone, she had taken half of everything. He let out a slow breath, his pulse hammering as his driver maneuvered through the neon-lit city streets. His phone buzzed in his lap, screen lighting up with another message from Sophia. Oh, darling, did you think I didn't know? Ethan felt something tighten in his chest, something between fury and panic. Of course he knew she was angry. Of course he had assumed she might fight back. But this wasn't the reaction of a woman scorned. This was something else entirely. But losing his empire, losing control, that was unacceptable. His phone buzzed again, this time his lawyer, Richard Calloway. He answered instantly. Tell me you can fix this, Ethan growled, voice taut with fury. There was a long silence on the other end. I don't know what to tell you, Ethan. Richard's voice was tight, uneasy. It's ironclad. The accounts, the assets, you signed off on them. The board had already started shifting shares weeks ago. And the prenup? Well, turns out Sophia had some excellent legal counsel. Whatever loopholes we thought existed, she closed them before you even knew they were there. Ethan's vision blurred with rage. You're telling me my wife just walked away with half my empire and I can't do a damn thing about it? She's not your wife anymore, Ethan. The words sent a cold chill through him. Look, I'll keep digging, Richard continued. There's got to be something she missed, something we can use against her. But right now, she's got you in a checkmate. Ethan ended the call before Richard could say another word. Checkmate. The very idea made his blood boil. Sophia had always been docile, beautiful, the perfect accessory to his life. Elegant, graceful, accommodating. The kind of wife a man of his stature was supposed to have. She was never meant to outmaneuver him. And yet, she had played him so flawlessly that he hadn't even realized he was a pawn until the game was over. His driver pulled up to his penthouse, but Ethan barely registered it. His mind was still reeling, calculating, searching for a way to regain control. Vanessa, the thought hit him suddenly. She had been there, she had watched it unfold. She had just as much to lose. With renewed determination, he stormed into his penthouse, barely noticing the sleek marble floors, the dim chandelier overhead. He threw his coat aside, loosened his tie, and grabbed a glass of whiskey before dialing Vanessa's number. She answered on the first ring. "Ethan," her voice was tight. "You're lucky I'm still answering your calls after that disaster." He wasn't in the mood for her theatrics. "Where are you?" he demanded. "In my apartment. Why?" "We need to talk." A pause, then a dry, bitter laugh. "Oh, now you want to talk?" she mused. "I just watched your wife tear you to pieces in front of half of Manhattan and you think I'm in the mood to chat?" Ethan clenched his jaw. "Vanessa, listen to me." "No, you listen to me," she snapped, venom dripping from her words. "I did not sign up for this. You told me you had everything handled, that she was weak, that she would break, that you were going to leave her with nothing, that we would be together without consequences. Instead, I got blindsided by a woman who played both of us." Ethan took a long, steadying breath. "You think I planned for this?" he hissed. "I think you let this happen," Vanessa spat back. "You got complacent, Ethan. You underestimated her, and now we're both screwed." She wasn't wrong, and that infuriated him more than anything. "Listen to me," he said, voice controlled, calculated. "We can fix this. She's not done. I know her. She doesn't play games unless she intends to win big. This wasn't just about the money. She's up to something, Vanessa, and we need to find out what before it's too late." Silence, and then reluctantly, Vanessa sighed. "What are you suggesting?" Ethan stared out over the city skyline, jaw tight. "We find out what she's planning," he said darkly, "and we stop her before she takes anything else. Because one thing was certain, if Sophia Reynolds thought she had won, she was wrong. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Section 4. Sophia's plan unfolds. Sophia leaned back in her chair, sipping a glass of wine as she gazed out at the skyline from her new penthouse. The soft hum of the city below was a quiet reminder that she had stepped into a new life, one where she was no longer bound by Ethan Reynolds' shadow. A notification pinged on her phone. Vanessa Montclair spotted leaving Ethan Reynolds' penthouse in the early morning hours. Sophia smirked. The media was eating it up, already spinning headlines about Ethan's swift rebound. Let them. It didn't matter what the world thought. It only mattered that Ethan was exactly where she wanted him to be, scrambling, desperate, and grasping at whatever remained of his former empire. She had planned every move. For years, she had watched Ethan slip further into his delusions of control. He thought he could cheat, manipulate, and scheme his way through life without consequences. He had assumed she would always be there, waiting, oblivious to his indiscretions. But Ethan had never seen the full picture, and now he was playing a game she had already won. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. She turned as the door opened, revealing Julian Cross, her longtime confidant and the legal mind who had orchestrated her financial triumph. He strode in, carrying a folder, his expression calm and knowing. "How's our favorite fallen billionaire doing?" he asked dryly. Sophia chuckled, setting her glass down. Exactly as expected, panicking, clinging to Vanessa like she's his last lifeline. Julian sat across from her, placing the folder between them. Well, if he wasn't already losing his mind, this will push him over the edge. He slid the folder toward her. Sophia opened it, scanning the contents. A slow, satisfied smile spread across her lips. Bank records, legal agreements, documents Ethan had signed without realizing their true implications. "He doesn't even know what's about to hit him," Julian said, amusement flickering in his sharp blue eyes. "By the time he figures it out, it'll be too late." Sophia traced her fingers over the documents. Ethan had spent years believing he held all the power, but in reality, he had been signing it away, little by little. The penthouse he lived in, owned by her. The company assets he still believed were his, transferred before the divorce even reached the courts. The investments he counted on to rebuild, legally tied up in contingencies that made them impossible to access without her approval. It was deliciously poetic. "Let me guess," Julian said, raising an eyebrow. "Ethan's already looking for a way to take it back." Sophia smiled. "Oh, he thinks he's looking for a way to take it back. But really, he's just running in circles exactly where I want him." Julian chuckled. "And Vanessa? What's the plan there?" Sophia leaned forward, tapping the folder. "She's an opportunist. She'll stick around as long as she thinks Ethan has something left to offer. But when she realizes he's completely broke, She'll be gone. Julian studied her, nodding approvingly. You've really thought of everything, haven't you? Sophia met his gaze, a glint of steel in her eyes. I didn't spend years in that marriage watching Ethan underestimate me just to walk away quietly. He took my trust, my time, and my loyalty for granted. Now I'm taking everything else. Julian smirked. Remind me never to get on your bad side. A flicker of humor crossed Sophia's face. You were the one who helped me pull this off. I think you're safe. Julian leaned back, stretching his arms. So, what's next? Sophia glanced at the city skyline, the wheels already turning in her mind. Next? She let the word hang in the air, savoring the moment. Ethan thinks the worst has already happened, that losing the money, the company, and me was the final blow. She turned back to Julian, her expression dangerously calm. But I'm not done yet. Because, while Ethan Reynolds was busy trying to reclaim his fortune, he had yet to realize the real trap waiting for him. Section 5, the walls close in. Ethan Reynolds paced his penthouse, the walls of his once magnificent empire closing in around him. The city lights twinkled outside, mocking him with their brilliance. A month ago, this view had belonged to him. All of it had belonged to him. Now, everything was slipping away. The divorce had been brutal enough, but the financial aftermath was devastating. He had assumed losing half of his wealth would be a temporary setback, something he could rebuild. But Sophia had been 2 steps ahead at every turn. His assets were frozen, and worst of all, his accounts were bleeding out faster than he could stop them. Where the hell is the money going? He snarled, slamming his fist onto the marble counter. Vanessa, draped lazily across the couch in a silk robe, exhaled in annoyance. Ethan, you've been screaming at your laptop for hours. Maybe take a break? Vanessa stretched like a cat, her perfectly manicured nails glinting under the soft glow of the chandelier. Well, that's what happens when you get outplayed, darling. Ethan's blood boiled. He hadn't just been outplayed, he had been humiliated. He had walked into that anniversary dinner believing he held all the cards, thinking he could dictate the terms of the confrontation, control the outcome. Instead, Sophia had blindsided him, not just with the divorce, but with the revelation that she had already stripped him bare. And now, every attempt to claw his way back to power was being blocked at every turn. Ethan turned his attention back to his laptop, scanning through a seemingly endless stream of legal documents. He had been trying to unravel how Sophia had done it. One thing was clear. She hadn't acted alone. She had help, and if he could find who had orchestrated this entire financial ambush, maybe, just maybe, he could undo some of the damage. He reached for his phone and dialed his last remaining legal advisor. James, tell me you have good news. A heavy sigh came through the receiver. Ethan, I won't sugarcoat this. You're in deep. Sophia had this planned for years. She slowly moved assets, restructured accounts, and funneled investments into shell companies you didn't even know existed. Ethan clenched his jaw. You're saying I signed away my own wealth? Not directly, James admitted, but Sophia leveraged everything legally. She had clauses buried in contracts, contingencies you never paid attention to. Your real estate investments, under her trust. Your liquid assets, tied up in holdings she controlled through a third-party LLC. The company shares you thought you retained, transferred under a silent clause in your pre-divorce agreements. Ethan's breath hitched. I need to find a way to contest this. James hesitated. Ethan, even if you fight this in court, it could take years. By then, she'll have moved everything so thoroughly that you'll be lucky to recover a fraction of what you lost. Ethan's vision blurred with rage. Then I need leverage. There has to be something I can use against her. A long silence stretched across the line. Finally, James spoke. You're not going to like this, but there's one person who might have what you're looking for. Ethan frowned. Who? Julian Cross. Ethan's grip tightened on the phone. That name, it had been everywhere in the documents he had reviewed. Julian Cross was a high-powered attorney, a corporate mastermind who had represented some of the wealthiest figures in the country. And now it was becoming painfully obvious that he had been the architect behind Sophia's financial coup. Ethan's stomach churned. So you're telling me Sophia didn't just plan this? She had Cross working with her from the beginning? Seems that way. Ethan's fingers dug into the countertop. He had always thought he was the one making the strategic moves, controlling the narrative. But Sophia had been playing an entirely different game. And she had won. A sharp laugh echoed from the couch. "Vanessa." Ethan turned to her, scowling. "What's so funny?" She tilted her head, swirling the wine in her glass. Just watching a man realize he was never the smartest person in the room. Ethan's nostrils flared. "Not the time, Vanessa." "Oh, I think it's the perfect time." She sat up, crossing her legs. "Ethan, darling, you're drowning. And you keep thinking you can fix this if you just dig hard enough. But let's be honest. You're not getting your money back, not really." Ethan's fists clenched at his sides. "And what do you suggest? That I just roll over and let her walk away with everything?" Vanessa's lips curled into a smirk. "I suggest you stop playing defense and start thinking about what Sophia doesn't see coming." Ethan narrowed his eyes. "And what exactly would that be?" Vanessa leaned forward, lowering her voice. "You know her secrets, don't you?" Ethan stilled. "You know her weaknesses. The things she tried to bury. The things she thought you'd never use against her." Ethan exhaled slowly. Sophia had protected herself from him financially, but Vanessa wasn't wrong. There were other ways to hurt her, to make her pay. A slow smirk crawled onto his face as an idea began to form. "All right," he muttered, pacing again. "Let's see how Sophia handles being on the other side of a power play." Vanessa grinned, sipping her wine. "That's the spirit, darling." But what neither of them realized was that Sophia already knew. She had anticipated every move Ethan would make, including this one. And just like before, she was already 10 steps ahead. Section 6. The Counter Move. Sophia Reynolds stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of her new penthouse, sipping a glass of red wine as she watched the cityscape sprawl beneath her. New York had never looked as beautiful as it did now. With the weight of her past finally off her shoulders, she had won. She had spent years planning for the moment she walked out of that anniversary dinner with her head held high, leaving Ethan and Vanessa in shock. Every move she made, every asset she secured, and every connection she nurtured had been for this. But she wasn't foolish enough to believe Ethan would simply accept his loss. He would retaliate. And that's exactly what she was waiting for. A faint smirk played on her lips as she set her glass down and picked up her phone. The screen lit up with a notification, an encrypted email from Julian Cross. Subject: He's making his move. Her fingers moved swiftly as she opened it, scanning the contents. "Ethan is reaching out to your old contacts. He's looking for leverage. He'll come for your past, hoping to find something to use against you. But what he doesn't know is, we already saw this coming. Stay ready." Sophia's eyes gleamed with amusement. Of course she knew. Ethan was predictable in his desperation. He was a man who couldn't stand losing, who always had to claw his way back to power. And when a man like that was cornered, he only had one option left: go for the personal attack. Too bad for Ethan, there was nothing left to expose. She picked up her phone and dialed Julian. The call barely rang before he answered. "I assume you saw my email." "I did," Sophia replied, swirling her wine. "And let me guess, he's starting with my family." "Bingo." Julian sounded almost bored. "He's trying to dig up anything about your father's company, the settlement after his death, and your mother's past legal troubles." Sophia scoffed. "He's grasping at straws. That's all ancient history. That's what I told him when he called me." Sophia's fingers tightened around her glass. "Ethan called you?" "Oh, he did," Julian chuckled. "He wanted to see if I could be persuaded to work with him instead of you." Sophia rolled her eyes. Classic Ethan. He always thought everything was about money and influence. He still hadn't figured out that some people couldn't be bought. Julian continued. "I played along just enough to confirm what he was after. But don't worry, I fed him exactly what we wanted him to hear." "And what was that?" "That there's a sealed case regarding your family's assets, something that could be damaging if it were ever brought to light." Sophia grinned. "So now he thinks he has something on me." "Exactly," Julian said smoothly. "And he's about to waste his time chasing nothing." Sophia leaned back against the couch, stretching her legs. She had to hand it to Julian. He was brilliant at deception. She had worked with him for years, trusting him to execute every financial and legal move that had led her here. And now he was making sure Ethan ran in circles, while she continued building her next empire. Because this wasn't just about revenge. Sophia wasn't satisfied with just taking Ethan down. She was ensuring that when she rebuilt, she would be untouchable. "Let him dig," she mused. "By the time he realizes the truth, it'll be too late for him to do anything about it." Julian chuckled. That's the plan. A knock on her penthouse door interrupted their conversation. Sophia glanced at the time. Right on schedule. I have to go, she told Julian. My next guest just arrived. Enjoy, Julian said. Call me if you need me. She hung up and strode to the door, opening it to reveal a man in a sharp charcoal suit. His silver hair was neatly styled, and his expression was all business. Mr. Sterling. She smiled, stepping aside. Thank you for coming. Nathaniel Sterling, a high-profile private investigator, stepped inside, his piercing blue eyes scanning the space before settling on her. You said you needed me to track someone, he said without preamble. Sophia nodded. Vanessa Montclair. A flicker of interest crossed his face. You want to know what she's up to? No, Sophia said coolly, closing the door behind him. I already know what she's up to. I want to know who's funding her. Sterling's brow lifted. You think someone else is backing her? I know someone is, Sophia replied. Vanessa is an ambitious snake, but she's not capable of orchestrating this on her own. She got too bold, too reckless. Someone gave her the confidence to do it. Sterling took out a small notepad. What's your theory? Sophia's lips pressed into a thin line. It's either one of Ethan's business rivals trying to use her against him, or someone who wants to see me lose just as much as Ethan. Sterling scribbled something down before looking up. And if I find out who it is? Sophia smiled. Then I'll take them down before they even see me coming. Sterling chuckled. I like the way you think, Mrs. Reynolds. Sophia's smile didn't waver. Miss Reynolds. She had reclaimed her name, and soon she would reclaim everything Ethan had once thought was his. Sterling nodded. I'll start digging. Expect updates soon. As he left, Sophia turned back to her city view, her mind already working 3 steps ahead. Ethan thought he was playing a new game. He didn't realize he was already losing. Section 7. The Mistress's Last Card. Vanessa Montclair was not the type of woman who took defeat well. Sitting in the dimly lit lounge of an exclusive Manhattan club, she swirled her cocktail, her manicured nails tapping against the crystal glass. She had spent years perfecting her image. Charming, alluring, and most importantly, indispensable. Ethan Reynolds was supposed to be her ticket to the top, a golden meal ticket wrapped in a tailored suit. And now, she was a joke. Ever since that disastrous anniversary dinner, whispers followed her wherever she went. The humiliated mistress, the gold digger who overplayed her hand, the woman who got played at her own game. The socialites who once envied her now looked at her with amusement. The same men who once pursued her suddenly found her too scandalous to touch. But Vanessa had one thing that those snobs underestimated. She never accepted defeat. She had one final card to play, and she was going to make sure Sophia Reynolds paid. Across the lounge, a man slid into the booth opposite her. He was tall, dark-haired, and had the sharp, calculated look of someone who wasn't in the habit of wasting time. Sterling's on my tail, Vanessa said, taking a slow sip of her drink. That was fast. Her guest smirked. Sophia doesn't waste time, but then again, neither do we. Vanessa leaned forward. Tell me you have what I need. He reached into his jacket and placed a slim manila folder on the table between them. Vanessa's heart pounded as she picked it up and flipped it open. The contents were gold. Sophia's connections, offshore accounts, private business dealings, things that even Julian Cross hadn't managed to wipe clean. How reliable is this? Vanessa asked, her voice cool, but her hands gripping the edges of the folder tightly. As reliable as it gets, the man replied. This isn't just dirt. It's the kind of thing that, if played right, could put her in a very, very difficult position. Vanessa's lips curled into a slow smile. Finally, do you want me to leak it? The man asked, watching her with interest. Vanessa considered it. That would be the easy move. But no, she wanted more than just public embarrassment. She wanted Sophia to feel it. I'm going to deliver it myself, Vanessa said, sliding the folder into her purse. The man raised an eyebrow. Risky. Vanessa smirked. Sophia Reynolds thinks she's untouchable. Let's see how she handles this. Sophia wasn't surprised when Vanessa called. She had been waiting. Sitting in her penthouse, she stared at the name flashing on her phone. Vanessa had been lying low since the anniversary dinner, but Sophia knew she wouldn't stay silent forever. She answered on the 3rd ring. Vanessa. My. Vanessa's voice dripped with mock sweetness. I didn't think you'd pick up so quickly. Aren't you busy enjoying all of Ethan's money? Sophia leaned back in her chair, unimpressed. Cut to the chase. What do you want? Vanessa laughed. You know, I have to admire you. You played the long game and you won. But you made one mistake, sweetheart. Sophia's grip tightened around her phone. Enlighten me. I know your secrets, Vanessa purred, and I'm willing to bet the world would love to know them too. Sophia felt nothing. Not panic, not fear, just calm calculation. Vanessa thought she had leverage. She was wrong. Sophia exhaled as if bored. Meet me at the Rosendale, tonight, 8 p.m. Vanessa hesitated. No lawyers, no security. Sophia's lips twitched. Just us. Silence, then, you're on. The Rosendale was a discreet high-end restaurant, perfect for private wars. Sophia arrived early, selecting a table near the back, where the dim lighting and soft jazz music created the perfect setting for a final confrontation. At precisely 8 p.m., Vanessa sauntered in. She was dressed for battle. A deep red dress, hair sleek and perfect, lips curled into a knowing smirk. She slid into the seat across from Sophia and placed the manila folder on the table. You should read this, Vanessa said smoothly. Sophia didn't even glance at it. I already know what's in there. Vanessa's expression flickered just for a second. Then you know I can ruin you. Sophia leaned forward, resting her chin on her hand. And you think I didn't prepare for this? Vanessa frowned. What are you talking about? Sophia smiled, slow, amused, deadly. Vanessa, do you know why I never tried to destroy you outright? Vanessa tensed. Because you were never the real enemy. Sophia continued. You were a distraction. A very pretty, very ambitious distraction. And I needed you to believe you were important long enough to keep my real work hidden. Vanessa's confidence wavered. You're bluffing. Sophia reached into her bag and pulled out a folder of her own. She slid it across the table. Vanessa hesitated before flipping it open. The blood drained from her face. Inside were financial records, offshore transactions, evidence linking Vanessa to not just Ethan, but to a much bigger game. Illegal deals, shady business partners, connections she had tried to erase. Sophia's voice was calm. I had Julian do some digging of his own. And imagine my surprise when I found out you've been playing more than one game. Vanessa's hands shook slightly as she flipped through the pages. This, she swallowed. This doesn't mean anything. Sophia tilted her head. Oh, but it does. Because right now, only I have this information. But if you so much as breathe a word about whatever's in your folder, then your name goes straight to the authorities. Vanessa's jaw tightened. You wouldn't. Sophia just smiled. Vanessa's fingers curled into fists. You think you've won? I don't think, Sophia said, standing gracefully. I know. She took her coat, slid it over her shoulders, and glanced down at Vanessa. This was your final move, and you lost. She walked away without a backward glance. Vanessa sat frozen in her chair, realization crashing over her. She hadn't just lost the game. She had been outplayed from the very beginning. Section 8, The Fall of a Millionaire. Ethan Reynolds had always believed himself untouchable, even after the anniversary dinner disaster, even after Sophia's cold, calculated departure. He had told himself that things would settle, that Sophia's fury would fade, that he would still be standing when the dust cleared. He was wrong. The cracks in his empire had started small. Investors pulling out of upcoming projects, whispers about his reckless spending and poor judgment. Then came the legal complications. Contractual disputes, shady dealings that he had kept hidden suddenly brought into the light. And at the heart of it all, Sophia. She had been careful, methodical, and ruthless. She hadn't just taken half his fortune in the divorce, she had dismantled him. Now, as Ethan sat in his once glorious Manhattan penthouse, surrounded by half-packed boxes and unopened letters from his lawyers, he finally understood. He wasn't just losing money. He was losing everything. His phone buzzed on the marble countertop. He almost ignored it, but something told him he shouldn't. One glance at the caller ID made his stomach drop. It was Julian Cross, Sophia's right-hand man, the same man who had quietly moved through the shadows, ensuring every move she made was precise. Ethan exhaled sharply before answering. What do you want? Julian's voice was calm. I'm calling to remind you that your grace period is over. Ethan pinched the bridge of his nose. What the hell are you talking about? Julian didn't even hesitate. Sophia gave you a chance to accept your losses and move on. You should have taken it. Ethan's pulse spiked. And if I don't? A beat of silence, then I bury you. The words were spoken without emotion, without anger, just a statement of fact. Ethan gritted his teeth. "You think you can threaten me?" Julian chuckled. "Ethan, you don't even know what's coming." Click, the call ended. Ethan stared at his phone, an uneasy chill running down his spine. He had always underestimated Sophia. That was his first mistake. And now, he was about to find out just how far she was willing to go. The next 24 hours were a disaster. First, the headlines hit. Ethan Reynolds under investigation for financial misconduct. Then, his personal assistant, one of the few people still loyal to him, called in a panic. "There's an emergency board meeting," she whispered over the phone. "They're talking about removing you as CEO." Ethan froze. "What?" "I don't know how, but the investors, they're backing Sophia. She's been making quiet moves for months, Ethan. You need to do something." Ethan's grip on his phone tightened. Sophia, of course. While he had been spiraling, licking his wounds, she had been working, setting up the pieces for his final fall. Ethan grabbed his jacket and stormed out of his penthouse. The boardroom was eerily quiet when he entered. A long table polished and gleaming under the soft glow of overhead lights. 12 men and women sat before him, waiting. At the head of the table, Sophia. She looked completely unbothered, dressed in a sleek black suit, her expression cool and composed. Ethan's stomach twisted. He hadn't expected this. "She doesn't even work for the company," he snapped. "Why is she here?" One of the board members, a sharp-eyed woman named Evelyn Clark, folded her hands neatly. "She's here because we asked her to be." Ethan's jaw clenched. "And why the hell would you do that?" Sophia tilted her head. "Because they trust me." The words were a dagger. Ethan laughed, bitter and hollow. "You think you can just waltz in here and take my place?" Sophia didn't flinch. "I don't need your place, Ethan. I just need you to step aside." Silence, a suffocating, heavy silence. Then Evelyn cleared her throat. "The reality is, Ethan, your public image is in shambles. Investors are nervous. We need stability." Ethan scoffed. "And you think Sophia is stability?" Evelyn's expression was unreadable. "We think Sophia is a hell of a lot more competent than you." Ethan's pulse pounded. This couldn't be happening. His own company, his own board. And they were siding with his ex-wife? "Do you know what you're doing?" he demanded, slamming his hand against the table. "Do you have any idea what I've built?" Sophia's voice was soft but sharp as a blade. "Yes," she said, "that's why I had to take it away from you." The final blow, a slow, merciless execution. Ethan felt his world tilt. He had lost. Completely. The meeting ended with a single, crushing decision. Ethan Reynolds was officially removed from his own company. He walked out of the boardroom in a daze, numb and disoriented. It was only when he reached the street, stepping onto the cold pavement, that the reality hit. His fortune dwindling, his reputation ruined, his company gone. And at the center of it all, Sophia, watching as he burned. Ethan staggered. He had been so sure that Sophia would crumble, that she would beg for him back, that she would never dare to challenge him. But now he was the one left with nothing. And Sophia, she wasn't done yet. Across the city, in a different office entirely, Sophia sat at a sleek, modern desk, scrolling through the latest headlines. She had won the battle. But the war wasn't over. Vanessa still lurked in the shadows, wounded but dangerous. And Ethan was unpredictable. He wasn't the type of man to accept defeat easily. Sophia exhaled, reaching for her phone. She had worked too hard for this. She wasn't going to let her empire crumble now. With a single click, she dialed Julian. "It's done," she said. "Now we watch." Because if Ethan Reynolds thought this was over, he had no idea what was coming next. Section 9, The Rise of a Woman Scorned. Sophia had spent years playing the perfect wife. She had smiled at business dinners, worn the expensive dresses Ethan had picked for her, and nodded along as he boasted about his latest success. But behind those polite smiles and well-practiced words, she had been watching, learning, and now she was the one sitting in power. Ethan was finished. His company was gone. His reputation was in ruins. And his mistress? Well, Vanessa had been eerily silent since the night of the board meeting. Sophia had expected some retaliation, a last-ditch attempt by Vanessa to claw her way back into Ethan's life, to salvage whatever crumbs were left. But there had been nothing. Until now. Meet me. It's about Ethan, 9 p.m. The Lexington Hotel. Suite 1408. Sophia's lips curled. Vanessa. She had debated ignoring it. After all, Vanessa was a desperate woman, and desperate women made messy mistakes, but something told her this was important. So she went. The Lexington Hotel was old money, classic, elegant, and filled with the kind of quiet luxury that attracted New York's elite. Sophia stepped off the elevator and walked down the hallway, her heels clicking against the marble floor. Suite 1408. She knocked. A moment later, the door opened, just enough for Sophia to see Vanessa's face. The once radiant socialite was unrecognizable. Her usually flawless complexion was hollowed out with stress, her green eyes sharp with something that looked dangerously close to panic. "You came," Vanessa murmured, stepping aside to let her in. Sophia entered, glancing around. The suite was immaculate but empty. No signs of anyone else. "Are you alone?" Sophia asked, folding her arms. Vanessa laughed, a short, bitter sound. "You think I have anyone left?" Sophia smirked. "No, I suppose you don't." Vanessa walked over to the bar and poured herself a drink. She didn't offer one to Sophia. "Ethan is drowning," she said, taking a slow sip. "But I think you already know that." Sophia didn't respond. Vanessa studied her. "You've won, Sophia. You got everything you wanted. So tell me, why does it feel like you're still playing the game?" Sophia tilted her head. "Because I know Ethan and he doesn't lose quietly." Vanessa smirked. "No, he doesn't." There was a pause, one that stretched just long enough to make Sophia uncomfortable. Then Vanessa set down her glass and slid a folder across the table. Sophia hesitated, then picked it up. She opened it, eyes scanning the contents. Her stomach dropped. Inside were documents, wire transfers, business records, fake invoices, and at the center of it all, Ethan's name. Sophia felt her pulse spike. "Where did you get this?" Vanessa leaned back against the couch, arms crossed. "I was his mistress, Sophia. Did you really think I didn't keep receipts?" Sophia clenched her jaw. "You were planning to blackmail him." Vanessa's eyes flickered with amusement. "Of course, until you beat me to it." Sophia shut the folder. "What do you want?" Vanessa tapped her nails against the glass. "Ethan is desperate. He's trying to salvage what's left, but the truth is, he's already drowning. The only way he comes back from this is if he finds a scapegoat." Sophia froze. Vanessa leaned in, voice low. "And guess who he's planning to blame?" The next morning, Sophia sat in her penthouse, staring at the folder on her desk. Vanessa had been right. Ethan was already moving. An hour ago, a story had leaked. One claiming that Sophia was the mastermind behind the financial scandal, that she had orchestrated the misuse of company funds, that she had manipulated her way into power. It was a lie. But it didn't matter, because in the world of high society and power, perception was everything. Sophia wasn't naive. This wasn't just Ethan's doing. Someone else was behind this. Someone powerful, someone who wanted her gone. Sophia picked up her phone and dialed Julian. "It started," she said the moment he answered. Julian sighed. "I know, we're already handling damage control." Sophia exhaled. "It's Ethan." "No." Julian hesitated. "It's bigger than Ethan." Sophia frowned. "What do you mean?" Julian's voice was grim. "I did some digging. Those shell companies Ethan used, they weren't just his. Someone else has been funding him. And whoever they are, they're not happy that you took him down." Sophia stilled. This wasn't just about Ethan anymore. This was about who was pulling his strings. "Find out who it is," Sophia said, her voice cold. "And when you do, tell me everything." Because if Ethan thought he could drag her down with him, he had no idea what she was capable of. And this time, she wasn't just going to win, she was going to bury him. Section 10, the final move. Sophia sat in the dim glow of her penthouse office, the skyline of Manhattan stretching endlessly beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. The city was alive with the hum of late-night traffic, but inside, all was silent. The folder Vanessa had given her lay open on the desk, its contents revealing a tangled web of deception. Ethan was just a pawn, a reckless, arrogant pawn, but a pawn nonetheless. Sophia had spent years planning her revenge against Ethan. She had prepared for every possible counterattack, every desperate attempt he might make to crawl back from ruin. But she had underestimated one thing. He wasn't acting alone. Julian's words echoed in her mind. Someone else has been funding him. That meant Ethan wasn't just trying to take her down out of spite. He was being directed, and that made him dangerous. Sophia exhaled, forcing herself to remain calm. She wasn't new to power plays, she was built for this. She picked up her phone and dialed Julian again. "It's time," she said simply. Julian hesitated. "Are you sure? Once we do this, there's no going back." Sophia's lips curled into a cold smile. There was never any going back. The next morning, the first blow landed. The headlines screamed scandal. Ethan Reynolds' secret financial dealings exposed, millions unaccounted for. The article laid everything bare, the fake invoices, the shell companies, the offshore accounts. And at the center of it all, Ethan Reynolds. The story had been leaked strategically, just enough to plant doubt in the minds of investors, to shake the board's confidence. It wasn't enough to destroy him, not yet, but it was enough to weaken him, enough to make his allies turn on him. And sure enough, by noon, the fallout had begun. Sophia sat in the back of a black town car, watching the chaos unfold on the news. Ethan had called a press conference. The car pulled up in front of the hotel where Ethan had gathered reporters, and Sophia stepped out, her heels clicking against the pavement. Julian was waiting for her by the entrance. "He's unraveling," Julian murmured, handing her an earpiece. "Listen to this." Sophia placed the small device in her ear as they slipped inside, standing at the back of the crowded room. Ethan stood at the podium looking disheveled. He was trying to hold it together, but Sophia could see the cracks in his carefully constructed mask. His voice was tight as he spoke. "These allegations against me are completely false. I have always conducted business with the highest integrity, and I have never—" He faltered. A reporter cut him off. "Mr. Reynolds, are you saying the financial records that were released are fabricated?" Ethan's jaw clenched. "I'm saying that this is a smear campaign, a deliberate attack to discredit me." Another reporter spoke up. "Are you implying your ex-wife is responsible?" Sophia's smirk deepened. He was trapped. If he said yes, it would sound like he was blaming her for his crimes. If he said no, it would mean he had no explanation. Ethan hesitated, just for a second. But it was enough. Sophia turned to Julian. "Release the next round of documents." Julian nodded, stepping away. A minute later, phones across the room pinged, reporters checking their alerts, their eyes widening. Sophia already knew what they were seeing. More evidence and more proof that Ethan had been siphoning money into private accounts. But this time, the documents also tied his mysterious backer to the scheme. Sophia watched Ethan's face as he saw the change in the room. His confidence shattered. He didn't even try to continue. He just walked off the stage. Back at her penthouse, Sophia poured herself a drink, relishing the silence. The next stage of the plan was in motion. Vanessa had vanished. Ethan's power was crumbling. But there was still one move left to make. The backer, whoever they were, they had been funding Ethan, pulling strings behind the scenes. And now that Ethan was falling, they would be looking for someone else to carry out their agenda. Sophia wasn't going to let that happen. She was going to find them first. And when she did, she was going to win. The meeting was set for midnight, a private estate just outside the city. Sophia arrived alone, stepping out of the car into the crisp night air. The man waiting for her was tall, his face obscured by shadows, but she knew exactly who he was. Nathaniel Carter, one of the wealthiest and most influential men in the country, and the man who had funded Ethan's entire downfall. Nathaniel studied her for a moment, then smiled. "You're a very interesting woman, Sophia." Sophia's expression remained unreadable. "And you're a very dangerous man." Nathaniel chuckled. "I have to admit I underestimated you. I didn't think you'd take Ethan down so efficiently." Sophia didn't blink. That was just the beginning. Nathaniel's smile widened. "I like you." Sophia tilted her head. "And I don't trust you." Nathaniel laughed softly. "That's smart." There was a pause, then he gestured toward a chair. "Sit. Let's talk." Sophia didn't move. Nathaniel raised an eyebrow. "Do you?" Sophia nodded. "You want someone who can finish what Ethan couldn't. Someone who can be smarter, more ruthless. Someone who can play the game and win." Nathaniel's gaze darkened. "And are you that person?" "I'm the only person." Nathaniel studied her for a long moment. Then he smiled. Sophia smiled back because she knew. The game wasn't over and it was just getting started. The end. If you enjoyed this story of power, betrayal, and ultimate revenge, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. More thrilling tales are coming your way. Stay tuned for the next one. Tuned for the next one. Tuned for the next one.